Hi, this is Tim Bonney, the pastor at Asbury United Methodist Church here in Bettendorf, Iowa. And this is the Ask Pastor Tim podcast. And the topic we're going to talk about today is what about the saints? I had a conversation with a church member this last week who had been listening to some Roman Catholic radio or a TV program, and they were having a presentation talking about a particular saint of the day. And this person wanted to know, so how do United Methodists think about saints or Protestants in general? And what do we do as we think about that? So let me give you a little background. Saints are looked at differently between Roman Catholic and Orthodox versus the Protestant churches. In the Roman Catholic Church in particular, saints are people who have shown certain spiritual merits. And in fact, today there's a whole criteria for being a saint, including that God has used you in a miracle or something like that. And there's criteria you have to follow. And then you can go through this process and become canonized as a saint. Now, unfortunately for you, if you become a saint, it means you're deceased. So it's not something to strive for, right? But these people are named, so it's a special recognition. And in that special recognition, the way that church has used that is it's a way for them to teach about what people in their church have done over the years. So it's a way to teach the history of the church. It's kind of like stained glass. I don't know if you've ever been in a church that had stained glass, but stained glass windows tell a story. And the invention of stained glass was to teach biblical stories to people, because in the Middle Ages and earlier, a lot of people didn't read. They didn't read books. They didn't own books. Only people who had money or priests or ministers or somebody in a leadership position actually had books that they could study. And since they couldn't read, they used stained glass windows to teach them the stories of the apostles or biblical stories. Well, saints were used and have been used in some of the same way, in that people who are named saints, particularly people who are historic figures, people like the 12 apostles and the writers of the Gospels, they would have a day set aside to honor that person. And in that, there would be readings, but also things that would be shared with people that would describe what they did as a Christian in their service to God. Now, when the Protestant churches split off from Roman Catholicism, one of the concerns that the Reformers had was that there had gotten to be so many people named as saints that there was literally a saint day for almost every day of the calendar. And they started to feel like that whole thing was overshadowing studying other things in the scriptures, just kind of your basic worship. And so many Protestant churches moved away from observing saints, but also Protestants came up with a different understanding of what sainthood is. We believe that all holiness comes from God, and I think all Christians believe that. And so Protestants began to feel like it really wasn't appropriate to single out certain people, but that really God is working to try to make us all into saints or people who are spiritually holy. And it's a work in progress in our lives that God's working through grace to try to make us better people. And so when the Bible talks about the saints of God, in our understanding, God's talking about all Christians as they become more like Jesus, more holy, and particularly as we enter Christ's kingdom, the saints are all God's people. But as we did that, there were some things that we lost. And one of them is that Protestants have not always done the best job of talking about the history of the church with members of the church. And so maybe some people we need to talk about more, like founders of our denominations or the early apostles or early church leaders, people don't know as much about because we don't have special observances for them anymore. And so one of the things that even Protestants and United Methodists have talked about is, could we, in a sense, bring back some observances around individuals Not saying that they're better than anybody else or that they've done miracles that other people haven't done, but just to remember the history around what they did and how they contributed to the growth of the church together. And so you'll see some observances in Protestant churches, like United Methodists observe Aldersgate Day. That's a day when John Wesley had his heart strangely warmed and had a renewed sense of God's love and grace in his life. And so that's become a special day for Methodists. Our Lutheran friends will observe Reformation Sunday because Martin Luther nailed his theses to the door and started a conversation about the church and things that were going wrong in the church. And so for Lutherans, that's become a day to kind of talk about Luther and what he did. And other Christian groups have other observances. So I think there's a value into discussing what early Christians have done, honoring people who've done special things. But for us, as United Methodist and as Protestant Christians, we tend to not want to lift any individual up as especially holier or to mark them that way. And I think that's something we should be always exploring, is what's the best way to share the history of the church, what's the best way to honor people, but also recognize that all of us are contributing to the work of the Lord, and it's actually God who makes us holy. As you continue to have questions, I do hope that you'll go to the church website, jesusisthebridge.org, and page down, and then you'll see the information for the podcast. There's 2 links there. One is to subscribe to the YouTube channel. The other is a link to enter questions. And if you click on that, you'll have an opportunity to send in a question. Know that if you ask a question, it's going to remain anonymous. We're not going to say who asked the question. We'll get your question in line as we continue to record. And I appreciate you all have asked really good questions, and so I appreciate your thoughts. No, you don't have to be a member of Asbury United Methodist Church. You don't have to be a practicing Christian to ask questions. If it's outside of my expertise, I'll try to find some expertise to cover it. But we'll do our best to answer the questions that we can, and appreciate your contribution to this podcast working. And always, I want you to remember, God loves you. God cares about you. You are God's creation, and God loves you very much. God bless you. Have a great day.